Last time we looked at the best games of the NES's early years, 1985 through 87, the formative classics that tend to go overlooked when people write Nintendo retrospectives. And they mostly go overlooked because of all the amazing games released in 1988 and 89, the peak of NES mania. In fact, there were so many great games released in those 2 years that we couldn't actually narrow this list down to 10. We had to settle on 12, and even then we had to chop some greats off our original list. What a great time that was to be a young nerd. Relive the rose-tinted pinnacle of the NES's life with a look back at these dozen classics. Just be warned, you're probably going to want to go play them all after this. Contra. Konami didn't just convert this coin-op multiplayer shooter to NES, they made it 50% more glorious. Even though Contra is basically the same game in its console incarnation as in the arcades, the little refinements here made a good game into a great game. New levels, smoother mechanics, and addictive 2-player co-op action took Contra to the next level. And the addition of the Konami code for 30 lives sure didn't hurt. Double Dragon. Unlike Contra, Double Dragon bears only a passing resemblance to the arcade original. No 2-player action, different levels, no elbow smash? But Technos Japan made some surprisingly smart design choices to turn this legendary brawler into a solo outing that works really well, with proto-RPGs and beautiful graphics. Sure, it has some unfair parts, but it's a worthy take on a classic. Life Force. The Konami code comes through once again for this challenging semi-sequel to Gradius. Combining vertical and horizontal shooting in one package along with cooperative multiplayer, it's sort of an arcade port, but not really. Life Force is the best Gradius game that was never called Gradius. Great graphics, great music, and tons of NES exclusive content make this a must. Super Mario Bros. 2. Yes, we know this wasn't originally a Mario game. Who cares? It's loads of fun. Super Mario 2 offers a totally different take on the Mario universe, revolving around tossing objects rather than jumping on bad guys, and there's not a single turtle to be seen. But it introduced many mainstays of the Mario world, including defining the series' cast beyond Mario himself, and it's way better than the Japanese Mario 2. Blaster Master. Sunsoft mucked around with exploratory platformer adventures for years, but with Blaster Master they finally got it right. Players control a crazy jumping tank capable of using powerful weapons, climbing walls, and even flying. And from time to time, their tiny little hero has to leave his tank and explore on foot where he's super vulnerable. It's challenging, but it's addictive. Bobble. Yeah, anyway. Bionic Commando. Platformers are all about jumping, so what happens when you play a platformer in which you can't jump? When that platformer is Bionic Commando, you have the best time of your life. A very loose adaptation of the arcade game, this NES port rebuilds the adventure from top to bottom, combining refined grappling mechanics and an open map to explore. An action game like no other. Tecmo Bowl. Even people who don't like American football admit that Tecmo Bowl is pretty great. Simple enough to be accessible, but polished enough to be endlessly replayable, this gridiron classic is equally fun even in the re-releases that remove all the old players' actual names. Ninja Gaiden. This fast-paced action game doesn't really offer a traditional view of ninja, why are you battling football players and birds? But it certainly is no slouch where challenge is concerned. Actually, it can be downright unfair. Still, the cutting-edge story, cutscenes will keep you going. It's like playing the movie. Actually, the Ninja Gaiden movie was terrible. The game is way better. The Guardian Legend. An exceptionally cool combination of Zelda and a top-down shooter, the Guardian Legend sees you wandering through an abandoned space station to power up your heroine, who then transforms into a starfighter and flies through space corridors to battle bosses. It's a creative mix of two genres that shouldn't work together, but in this case, totally do. Mega Man 2. What do you want? It's one of the greatest action games ever. A finely tuned journey through a dozen levels filled with colorful enemies and cool weapons. Oh, and the music's kind of amazing too. It's a timeless classic. And finally, Dragon Warrior. The RPG that started it all, and by it all I don't mean the Dragon Quest series, I mean Japan's love for role-playing games. Sure, it's simple by today's standards, but when it first launched, this was nothing less than a revolution. What do you mean you don't want to play? But thou must! And that's it for 1988 and 89. Keep watching and reading US Gamer for more rundowns of Essential Classics.